I'm sure the Ilum saw the sign announcing the Shiurim today, the Techeilas on Techeilas. The Shiurim of today, this morning, that they're going to be speaking about is the Techeilas B'zman Hazeh, if they found it, what is the Techeilas, how you make the Techeilas, how you take it out. In this morning's shir, which is also going to be on the topic of Techeilas, but it's not going to be on the above inyan, it's more on the Makoyer, the Gemara, the Rishonim speaking about Techeilas, and how they explain it in the Pasuk in Shlach, the Parsha of Tzitzis that we say every day, every morning, every night. The Pasuk says, Dabro b'nei Yisrael, v'amarta aleim v'osulem tzitzis al kanfi b'gdeim. You should make tzitzis, l'deiroisam, v'nosnu al tzitzis hakonav p'sil Techeilas. The Pasuk says you should make tzitzis, l'deiroisam, v'nosnu al tzitzis hakonav p'sil Techeilas. What's the pasuk? L'chayra kvelas alosh. The pasuk is saying twice to make tzitzis. The beginning of the pasuk is talking about the tzitzis, make tzitzis, which means the regular white strings. For asulem tzitzis al kanfi b'gdeim, put tzitzis on the corners of your beged, of your four corners beged. Put tzitzis, which is the white chutin, the strings. And then afterwards, the pasuk says, "V'nosnu al tzitzis." Besides what you have, your regular tzitzis. In additional, you should also put psil Techeilas, put blue strings. Now, it's interesting when the pasuk speaks about tzitzis. The pasuk says, "Put tzitzis." Then in the middle, the pasuk says, "This mitzvah l'doiroisam." It's for generations, l'doiris. And then afterwards, the pasuk says, continues on, put on Techeilas. Wouldn't it be more to say the mitzvah of tzitzis incomplete, and then afterwards say this mitzvah is l'doiris, either in the beginning or at the end? Why is it smack in the middle? Put on tzitzis, l'doiroisam, and then v'nasal tzitzis, put on the the Techeilas. So the Arachayim explains, and the same is also the Beis Halevi brings b'shem de Goyin, that there are two parts to the mitzvah that we know. That's not their chiddush, but there are two parts. The Mishnah Menachah says the two parts of the mitzvah are not ma'akev. The white is not ma'akev. The white strings are not ma'akev. The blue strings and the blue strings are not ma'akev the white. But there are two parts to the mitzvah. And that's what the pasuk is speaking about, the white tzitzis and the blue tzitzis, the Techeilas. And the pasuk is being meramis, says the Arachaim, the Goyin, that the regular mitzvah of tzitzis, the white chutim, that's l'doiroisam, that's always going to be in Klal Yisrael. However, the mitzvah of Techeilas, that part of the mitzvah, there's going to be a time for hundreds and hundreds of years, some period after the Churban Abayis, which we stopped with the Techeilas, we didn't have Techeilas, that everybody agrees that Techeilas came back. It's questionable if it came back was only the last 150 years, but for many generations there were no Techeilas. So the pasuk says, "V'asulam tzitzis al kanfi b'gdeim." The mitzvah of tzitzis, the white tzitzis, the regular strings, that's l'doiroisam as always. And then afterwards, the mitzvah of Techeilas, there's going to be a time that we're not going to have it. So the pasuk says that's the mitzvah of Techeilas, v'nosnu al tzitzis hakonov psil Techeilas. We're going to try to identify psil Techeilas, to go through what is psil Techeilas. What is psil Techeilas, the blue string? So Rashi says, psil Techeilas, tseva yorik shel chilazain. In other words, what is Techeilas? Techeilas is a dye. Seva yorik, which we're going to get to soon. What's the color of yorik? But when the Torah says psil Techeilas, Rashi teaches a string Techeilas, we're referring to the dye. The dye is we're talking about the dye, that color. The dye is Techeilas. So Rashi says two things. Rashi says the color is, the dye is Techeilas, and Rashi also says that it comes from the chilazin. Tseva yorik shel chilazin. But this dye, this blue, if we're just referring that the Torah says your psil Techeilas should be blue, a blue dye, could the blue dye be on anything? We know that the din Techeilas has to be dafka from tzemer, right? That's how we know the Torah is matter to wear shatnez of by tzitzis, because if let's say you have a beged shal pishton, and Techeilas has to be made from tzemer, and the Torah is matter medin esadei chaloisa, so you can wear on your tzitzis, you can wear your beged of pishton, you can wear tzitzis of Techeilas, which is tzemer. The Torah only says psil Techeilas that the dye is blue. Why can't you dye a tzitzis made out of pishton? So Rashi in Truma, when the Torah lists out the 13 different items that people gave for the binyan HaMishkan, Rashi says on Techeilas, Techeilas, when the Torah they said a Techeilas for Agama, Rashi says Techeilas tzemer tzavua bedam chalazin. Tzemer tzavua. In other words, not just that the dye is Techeilas, but rather wool that has a dye in it of Techeilas, that is Techeilas. So when the Torah says by us psil Techeilas, the Torah is not just saying a string that has a dye of Techeilas, whatever the color is, the dye of Techeilas, but rather the Torah is saying psil Techeilas, your string, your tzitzah should be Techeilas, should be made out of tzemer that's dyed Techeilas. Now we'll go into the second part of Rashi. Rashi says that the Techeilas, which we just explained, is the string, the blue string that's a tzemer string, a woolen string that's dyed Techeilas. Rashi says that this blue, this Techeilas, comes from the chilazin. What's the makor that it comes from the chilazin? So the Gemara Megillah Davav Amud Aleph, when the Gemara speaks about, discusses what Zvulun got al Choif Hayam, the Lashon HaPasuk, b'Choif Yamim Yishkoi. That's where Zvulun's chelik in Eretz Yisrael was. He got the coast, and the Gemara says, what did he do for a living that he got the coast? What benefits? The Torah says, Usfune Tmune Choil. He had the beaches, the sand, and the water, the coast. What did he have? So the Gemara says, Tani Rabbi Yosef, Sfune Zachi Lazain. And how Rashi explains, he made a living from the chilazin. The chilazin is what makes Techeilas, and since it's not easy to get, so they used to sell it for a very ledamim harbi, for a lot of money. That's how they made a living. That was one of the things that Zvulun had, the benefit of getting the coastal line in Eretz Yisrael. So the makor, that's the makor that the Techeilas, when the Torah says Techeilas, which is wool that has a dye of blue, where does that dye come from? The dye comes from the chilazin, and that's the Gemara. The Gemara says, Tani, on what Zvulun got by the water, he got the chilazin. Do you need a dafka take from a chilazin? Or could you take, maybe it's only a siman. In other words, what color is it, and what type of that color? Let's call it, it's blue, but how do you know what type of blue, how to refer to it? Maybe that's what chilazin is, but maybe you could take a blue from elsewhere that's bedoima. Maybe you could take a different blue, or like the Gemara calls it kala ilan. Could you take a blue that's the same blue as the Techeilas from a chilazin? So the Tosefta says, Techeilas, the Lashon HaTosefta, Techeilas ein ksheira elo min achilazon, shaloi min achilazon pasal. Has to come dafka from the chilazon, which we'll see soon. What is a chilazon? It's just interesting to note that Tiferes Yisrael in his Akdama, the Seder Moyed, the Tiferes Yisrael says that the chilazon is lav dafka. The chilazon is lav dafka. When we say chilazon, we want to have a siman on what type of color it is, so we refer to the chilazon. But if you would get the exact same blue, otherwise it would also be kosher. They want to bring a rye from the Rambam Perek Beis and Hilchos Tzitzis, when the Rambam explains and defines what is the blue of Techeilas. The Rambam says that it lasts and it doesn't fade out, but the Rambam doesn't make a mention that the blue comes from chilazin. So they want to say that it seems that it's not ma'akiv to come from chilazin, But that's not the pashtus. The pashtus is that the Techeilas has to come from the Chilazon, and obviously that's the contemporary Shaila. If the Techeilas, the one from a while back and the one from now, was it found? Did we find the Chilazon? But the pashtus is that you have to have the Techeilas coming from this Chilazon.
Kala even is not the type of like this is the Chilazon. That's why it's not true.
You're asking very good, Rabbi Shia. Lamaisa, the Gemara said, Kala Elon. If Lefi this Shitas Atveres Yisrael, that even if it doesn't come from the Chilazon, it's still kosher. So technically, Kala Elon, if it looks the same, it should be fine. L'chayri, you have to say, I was bothered also. L'chayri, you have to say that Kala Elon means that it's pretty bedoima, but it's not exactly, but it's enough that people get mixed up about. But if it would be exact, that wouldn't be a problem. So we have psil Techeilas means a string of tzitzis that's made out of wool, that's dyed with Techeilas, and Techeilas has to come, the pashtus has to come from the Chilazon. What is a Chilazon? The Gemara says that it's oila, and Rashi says oila min hayam. But what is it? I mean, it could be oila, it could be also, if it's by the water, it could be a plant as well. So the Gemara Menachos Daf Mem Daled, when this is the famous Gemara, because the Gemara over there says also va'oila echad l'shiv mishana, but the Gemara says Chilazon zeh gufa doima layam. Its body looks like the water, the outside, the shell, the fish. It looks like the yam. Ubriyasoi, and its figure is doima ladag. So the Gemara explains how the Chilazon looks like. It's somewhat like a fish. Rashi actually, ala Torah and Vayikra, Rashi says, and also it's in Rashi in Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadik Aleph, Rashi says, Kari l'Chilazon Techeilas, which would seem maybe more like a worm. So that's the definition of Chilazon. Obviously that's the Shaila, what they're speaking about, which we'll hear about later. What exactly is Chilazon? Is it the fish? Is it a snail? But it's somewhere along something that's in the water. Rashi says, the Gemara says oila, Rashi says oila min hayam. But that's Chilazon. Chilazon, which we see is ma'akev. Chilazon is something that comes, it lives by the water, in the water, it comes from the water, out of the water. But that's Chilazon. Where do you find the Chilazon? So it says, we saw already that it's Bechelka Shel Zvulun, which is by the water. The Gemara says oila, Rashi says in a few places oila min hayam, it comes from the water. So if you take a look at the map of Eretz Yisrael, which water did Zvulun get? Zvulun got the west coast in Eretz Yisrael, which means he got the Yam HaTichon, the Mediterranean. So it's somewhere along in the water of the Mediterranean. That's where the Chilazon is, which happens to be the Techeilas, the Chilazon of now. They say they found it, and you could go scuba diving, snorkeling. You could see it in the Yam HaTichon in the Mediterranean. The interesting shaila is that the Rambam here in Hilchos Tzitzis, when the Rambam says where you could find the Chilazon, the Rambam says that it's Motzi Ma'oid in the Yam HaMelech. The Chilazon is in the Yam HaMelech. The Rambam, Befurish. So the shaila is, first of all, in the Yam HaMelech, no living creatures, no creatures can't live, no fish can live in the Yam HaMelech. The Metzias, how is it possible? V'oid, as we saw in the Gemaras before, that Zvulun got, that was what Zvulun got, was the Chilazon to do business with. And Zvulun's Chelik was not by the Yam HaMelech, which is really more east in Eretz Yisrael. He got the west, he got the Mediterranean, that coast. So the Yavitz asks his Shaila, and the Yavitz says that it's a toyus, it's a shibush in the Rambam, it's a mistake. It's not supposed to say Yam HaMelech, it's really supposed to say, we're not talking about the Yam HaMelech, we're talking about the Mediterranean. So the Yavitz says, the Shaila, however, is that it's not only the Rambam, the Rishonim, the Chinuch, the Smag, when they bring the Rambam, they also bring Yam HaMelech. So in the Rambam itself, you could say a mistake, but the Rishonim quote the Rambam, and the Rambam says Yam HaMelech. So how could it be Yam HaMelech? The Yam HaMelech, there's no fish live in the Yam HaMelech, and it's the other side of Eretz Yisrael. So in Sefer Sfune Tmune Choil, this is from the Radzina, put out when he was Machadish, he identified about 130 years ago the Techeilas. So he was Mayashav the Shitas Rambam, and he says when the Rambam says Yam HaMelech, the Rambam is not referring to what we call the Dead Sea. The Rambam is referring to any ocean, any sea that's salty. That's what he calls Yam HaMelech. La'afuke, the Kinneret. The Kinneret, Lamashal, is fresh water. It's not salty water. So any sea, any ocean that's salty, he calls Yam HaMelech. And the same also as Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky and Emes Liyaakov and Parshas Masai says the same. And they bring rayas from many different Rambams. Just quote one raya, bring it. The Rambam at the end of Pirush HaMishnayos, all the way at the end, the Rambam speaks about that since we're in Golus, and he writes that he had to travel, and he was on a boat in the Yam HaMelech. So they say there's no boats go on the Yam HaMelech. So you see over there also, and the Rambam also lived in Egypt, in Mitzrayim, traveling up to Eretz Yisrael. So he didn't come across, going up, you're in the Mediterranean, you don't travel in the Yam HaMelech. So that's one of the rayas, that even though the Rambam says that the Chilazin is found in the Yam HaMelech, in the Dead Sea, it's actually not in the Yam HaMelech. He means the salted water, but it's the Mediterranean. We're in the Yam HaMelech. We're in the Mediterranean, could it be found? All along the coast, from south to north, where could you find it? So this is a Gemara on Shabbos. The Gemara on Shabbos, Tav Chavav Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Elu Tzaydei Chilazain Mesulmois Shel Tzur Ad Chaifa. That's where it is. These are regional area in Eretz Yisrael where you can find it. So we have the dye. The Techeilas means wool that has a dye in it of blue, of Techeilas. That's what Techeilas, when the Torah says still Techeilas. We saw the Makar is a Gemara that this dye comes from a Chilazin. The Chilazin is Ma'akev, and the Chilazin is a living creature that lives in the water, comes out of the water. That's the Chilazin. And we see what water, it's the Mediterranean. What's the color of Techeilas? I've been calling it till now blue, because that's what we're used to. If you take a look, when Rashi that we mentioned before, Rashi right here in Parsha Shalach, on the Pasuk of Tzitzis, Rashi says, Techeilas, is it Rashi Vas also? Yeah, Tseva Yorek. Tseva Yorek. Yorek is Pashtus as green. Rashi also in Parshas Truma V'Tzeva Yorek. Rashi in Brachas Tafnun Zayin Techeilas Yoreku. That's on the Mishnah. The Mishnah says Mishayaker. When could you start saying Kriya Shema in the morning? The Mishnah says Mishayaker ben Techeilas Alavan. So Rashi teaches what's Techeilas. Techeilas is Yorek. The Rambam in Pirush HaMishnayos also ben Lavan Lakarti. The Karti Hu HaYorek. So also calls it and which l'chayra comes out that it should be a green. L'chayra should come out a green. Some want to be miyashiv that it's a bluish green. But lamaisa.
Teal.
What?
Teal.
What is that? That's a mixture of blue and green.
Huh?
How do you get to that color? You just mix
Teal is more green. That's not turquoise. Teal.
blue and green mixed.
Teal is like
Lamaisa, the Gemara says, so the Radzina, again in that Sefer, has a whole simon about it with the color, blue and green. We see the violet, the Rishonim call it Yorek, which is really some sort of a green. Lamaisa, the Gemara in Menachos, what? So some say that Yorek really is a very broad concept in the color, all the way yellow, green, blue, so it could be referring to blue directly, which it is. The Gemara says in Menachos Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, the Gemara says Techeilas doimi liyam. So Techeilas doimi liyam, you could still say a lot of times the yam looks green. It looks green, it looks blue. Depends what sea, what ocean you're at. Some of them you look at it's green, some are blue. But then it says v'yam doimi l'rakia. So the rakia is already blue. That's clear. These are different. I think it's a lashon Yerushalmi. that the Yishalmi says Techeilas doima le'esev, ve'esev doima le'rakiyas. Esev is taka green, so that's the different color. I mean, it's blue, but the Lashon Rambam and Klei Amigdash, the Rambam says Peruk Ches Halachi Yud Gimel, the Techeilas ho'amura b'chol makom. Whenever we say Techeilas, in the pasuk we say every day by Kriya Shema Psil Techeilas. What is Techeilas? Dr. Rambam, Hu Hatzemer, like we said before, Techeilas is not just referring to the dye, but actually Techeilas is Tzemer, wool that has dye in it, Hatzavua that's painted, that's dyed, Ke'etzem HaShamayim, like the sky, Shehu Pasuach Men HaKachoil, which this already he goes into what shade of blue, which means light blue, and there's a big discussion also if the Techeilas is light blue, is dark blue. That's a big arichas, but the color of Techeilas is blue. Not to go in ba'arichas, but just bekitzer, when the Torah says psil Techeilas, you should have a string that's Techeilas. How many strings are supposed to be blue? Psil, a string, Techeilas, that's tzemer, that's dyed of blue. So there's a three-way machlokes harishonim. The Shitas HaRavid, which Shitas HaTosfos also, and that some who wear Techeilas a lot of noig like this, psil, which that's l'chayr the pashtas. Psil means one string. The tzitzis is made out of 4 strings, and you put it through the hole, and then it becomes 8. So it's really 4. So if one string is Techeilas, so 2 out of the 8 strings is Techeilas. That's psil. One string, one full string of the tzitzis is Techeilas. So 2 out of the 8 is Techeilas.
The one string that's Techeilas is the one that you have to wrap it over.
Oh, so what Moshe wants to know about wrapping, that already these are mamash and machlokes. I can show you afterwards, printed out all different ways. Mamash, there's a shaila in the wrapping around. Is it all blue? Is it half and half? Some shitas are that even in each, the chulias, half and half, and some even switch off. There's many shitas that we're for sure not going to go into.
That's not ma'akiv. Is that ma'akiv?
So that's right. So that's a very big shaila. But even when the Torah says psil Techeilas, so psil the string, how many strings? One shita, the Shitas HaRavid, is that one string which ends up being 2 out of 8. That's one string. Shitas Rashi, and how Tosfos explains that really psil, it's misvara, that it's half and half. In other words, 4 out of 8 are Techeilas. 2 out of the 4 are blue, 2 are white. So it's half and half. And then there's the Shitas HaRambam, that the Rambam learns that it's 1 out of 8 is Techeilas, which really means only a half a string is Techeilas. Again, we're not going, Moshe brought up about when you're tied with the knots and the chulias. We're talking about the strings itself hanging out. So either 1 is Techeilas, 1 out of 8, 2 out of 8, or 4 out of 8 are Techeilas. So we went through to explain and understand when the Torah says psil Techeilas, what the Torah is referring about. In the last under 150 years, there's been different types of Techeilas that came about. The Radzinas Techeilas, which is the tinned fish, and then more recent, which is the Murex snail. So these are Shaila, these Ba'a, these Keneged. 2 nights ago, by my uncle Meit Chassid, Rabbi Reisman is there. He's against. He holds this is not the Techeilas, more in the technical. What is it? What is the Chilazon? He has a bunch of rayas that this is not the Chilazon. The shaila is, and this shaila was asked, I think by the Radzina, was asked to the Beis Halevi. It's true that there's a shaila. Is it the Techeilas? Is it not the Techeilas? And the same shaila would be with the Techeilas Bezmanenu, the Chilazon. Is it the Chilazon? Is it not the Chilazon? It's a suffix. Lamaisa, the mitzvah of Techeilas, it's part of the mitzvah of tzitzis. It's not ma'akiv, but it's part of the mitzvah. So why don't you say suffix deraisa l'chumra? You should be mechuyev to wear the tzitzis. You should be mechuyev to wear the tzitzis Just like if you're not sure if you did the mitzvah, if you put on tefillin, if you took lulav, if it was a kosher lulav, so you have to make sure to do the mitzvah. If that's the case, you have to make sure that you did the mitzvah to do it over to be yotzeh. So why are you not mechuyev to put on Techeilas misafik? It's true, it's a safek. You have these many that hold it is, many that hold it's not. Misafik deiraisa l'chumri, you should be mechuyev to put on the Techeilas. What? That's a shmuz for itself. Bal Toisef, Bal Tigra. You're right. You're saying that should be a yishuv on the Safek deraisa because Lamaisa Safek Bal Toisef. I hear.
How's it Bal Toisef? You can't just pay the tzitzis.
You think there was something that might be the right one?
It might be not.
Maybe not. If you don't know what Bal Toisef?
Yeah.
Why?
We'll leave the Bal Toisef, Bal Tigra on the side. The Gemara says Velu Yehei. The Gemara says Velu Yehei Kala Elon.
If it's not, you're missing.
What?
If it's not the real one, you're missing tzitzis.
The Gemara says Velu Yehei Kala Elon, which means you still have the tzitzis. It's just died. Does it take it away? The Gemara takas mayashav. The Gemara says Velu Yehei, which means even if it's taka a fake blue, a person is not going to be nichlal and a person who fakes kala elon, because people that believe in the Techeilas, we're not here about faking it, but even if it's taka not v'lu yehei kala elon, it's not going to ruin it. What Elia is pointing out about Bal Toisef, Bal Tigra, that's a separate shmuz for itself. There's a lot to discuss about, but let's leave it on the side. The Bal Toisef, Bal Tigra, if you do have it and you don't, the shayla safek deraisa l'chumash yimechayiv, you should have to do it. So the Beis Halevi answered that Safek Deiraisa L'Chumra is only Machayiv if after you do it, after you Makayim, which means you're not sure if you were Yotzei a mitzvah of lulav, you don't know if this lulav was a kosher lulav. So you go and you take a different lulav, and after you took the lulav, you did the mitzvah, now you know for sure you were yotzei the mitzvah. Safek deiraisa l'chumra, which you're mechuyev to do the mitzvah over, or do the mitzvah because you're not sure you're makayim, that's all and only if after you do it, you could say, oh, I was makayim the mitzvah. But by Techeilas, even if you're going to do it misafik, you're still not sure afterwards if you makayim the mitzvah. So maybe Safek deiraisa is not makayiv. There's no chiv Safek deraisa. They bring a raya from the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, and these many more rayas lakan, the rayas against, and the meyashiv. Just one other tzad why, which is also brought Beis Halevi, the Briskerov, and this is a famous one, is that the Medrash says that Techeilas was nignas. It's a Medrash. The Techeilas was nignas. So the Beis Halevi says, I think it's the Beis Halevi. The Beis Halevi says nignas means it was hidden. Nevad means it was lost. The Aron was nignas. Nignas means it was hidden. We're not going to find it. In Senes Haman, the man was hidden. We're not going to find it. So if it says that it was hidden means that we're not going to find it. So we're not going to find it. That it's not meant to be. It's hidden. It's hidden that it's not meant to be found. Nevad means it was lost. Something that's lost you can find. But something, maybe it's a seminar after something. But something that's not something that's hidden means that it's hidden. We're not going to find it. But the miyashim, all this is not today's share over here. At least this morning wasn't to go for or against. I just wanted to bring the makoros from the pasuk, the Gemara, and the Rishonim to see what Techeilas is. Techeilas is tzemer tzavua, which means wool that's dyed and it's blue. And we see it comes from the Chilazon is from the Yam. And to hear more the contemporary of Techeilas, that's going to be later on this morning. Have a wonderful day.